A Christian who walks in integrity is a Christian who does what is right even when they don't understand. Who does what is right because they know it is right. In other words, walking in integrity means knowing what is right and then choosing to do what is right even when no one is watching. It is that choice to do that which is right regardless of the perspective of others that is what defines integrity. And so when we are called to walk in integrity, it's not do what is right because you don't want to suffer the consequences. It's not don't steal because you don't want to go to prison. It's don't steal because God says don't steal, and you're taking the fruits of the labor of other people and making it your own immorally. And so walking in integrity means knowing, first of all, knowing what is right. And that's where you might believe that the two colors are different. you gotta sometimes suspend what you have always believed to be true and line up, trust the scriptures that actually, if you do what the Bible says you should do, then that's the source of true contentment and true happiness in life. And so we choose to do what is right even when no one is watching, not because we fear the consequences, but because we walk in integrity. And we choose to do that which God desires us to do because we know that that's the right thing to do. So if God calls us to do something, He's going to give us the ability and the resources to do that which He called us to do. Obviously, it still takes faith. We walk in faith and we walk in integrity. But we know that what God calls us to do for Him, He always empowers us to do for Him. And so whatever God calls us to do for Him usually involves the commitment to give up that which we cannot keep to gain that which we cannot lose. See, there are sacrifices involved in doing that which God has called us to do. God gives us the heart, God gives us the mind, God gives us the skill and the ability and the knowledge and wisdom. God gives us these things, but integrity motivates us to do that which God has called us to do. And whatever God calls us to do for Him usually involves a commitment to give up something of ourselves. Something that is temporal for the sake of that which is eternal. So in verse 3, David says, "Besides, in my devotion to the temple of my God, I now give my personal treasures of gold and silver for the temple of my God, over and above everything I have provided for this holy temple already." There will be sacrifice in doing that which God calls you to do. And yet, if God has called us and gifted us, then integrity demands that we walk according to the truth. And we do that which God has called us to do, regardless of the personal cost. When we respond in willing obedience, it motivates others to also sacrifice freely and wholeheartedly to the Lord. See, our lives are never our own. You remember what Jesus said? You are the light of the world. Jesus said, I am the light of the world. And then He said, you are the light of the world. John the Baptist described Jesus as the light that came into the world. And the world should see what is right and what is good through the light that is reflected from Christians. But the Christians aren't the source of light. Jesus is the source of light. We just reflect God's love. We just reflect God's goodness. We just reflect God's holiness and righteous standard before others. And then when we respond in willing obedience, it motivates others to also sacrifice freely and wholeheartedly to the Lord. So he says in verse 6 and then 9, when the leaders of the families, the officers of the tribes of Israel, and the commanders of the thousands and commanders of hundreds, and the officials in charge of the king's work gave willingly, the people rejoiced at the willing response of their leaders, for they had given freely and wholeheartedly to the Lord. walking in integrity isn't just about what we do. Walking in integrity is also a model and example for those who are around us that motivates them too to walk in integrity. Because you know that the number one reason historically that people who are not Christians have rejected the gospel? The number one reason they give is hypocrisy in Christians. They see people who claim to be followers of God who do not live according to the teachings of the Bible. And so God simply says, walk in integrity. Do that which you know is right, regardless of the personal consequences, regardless of the sacrifice that you're called to make. We can be thankful for the generosity of God's people while at the same time recognizing that all that we are and all that we have is ultimately from God. So when God provides someone else with the means to be generous and to help us, we can be thankful to the person who gave to us, in spite of the fact that we know that everything ultimately comes from God anyway. Which is what David observes here when David the king also rejoiced greatly. David praised the Lord in the presence of the whole assembly, saying, "Praise be to you, Lord, the God of our father Israel, from everlasting to everlasting." Now, our God, we give thanks to you, and we praise your glorious name. But who am I, Lord? And who are my people that we should be able to give as generously as this? Everything comes from you, and we have given you only what comes from your hand. When God calls us to be generous, to be sacrificial, to help those who are in need, we need to recognize that that which we have here and now is only that which God has provided for us. Recognize that all that we have and all that we are is from God. That in itself will motivate integrity, will motivate walking in integrity. Because we can be thankful for the generosity of God's people while at the same time recognizing that all that we are and all that we have is ultimately from God. We know that God sees the heart and is pleased with integrity based on an honest intent and a willing spirit, loyalty and wholehearted devotion to God. See, there's not just a matter of obedience. The importance of teaching our children to walk in integrity means that we teach them to do that which is right because it is right, whether anybody is watching or not. Let's be people of integrity. Let's walk before the Lord faithfully and with wholehearted devotion. Let's give willingly and with honest intent. Let's remember that God tests the heart and God is pleased with integrity. C.S. Lewis was attributed with the saying, "Integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching." Let's walk in integrity with honest intent before the Lord our God.